Hey Summoners, how's it going? My name is Ivern and I will be your host for another patch rundown. Patch 10.22 is looking spicy and I'm excited to introduce you to all the changes resulting from this new patch. We'll discuss all the buffs and nerfs this patch, as well as provide you guys with tier lists to assist you in your climbs. Our analysts have curated lists for every role, so make sure to stay tuned. If you need to know who's overpowered, look no further because we'll cover that all in this video. Before we start the video though, I want you guys to know that if you're serious about improving, you need to head over to ProGuides.com. We've got a ton of resources there for you guys, including classes, coaches, and even VOD reviews. Take that next step and you should definitely check it out. Finally, let's run through our question of the day. What sorts of champions or champion designs would you like to see more of? I love champions that don't comply with the typical 4 ability layout. Champions like Aphelios, Nidalee, Jace, Elise, and in a way, Udyr. And they all break the typical 3 standard ability and an ultimate at level 6 mold. It's just more interesting in my opinion, and it creates tons of diversity to have in the game. I want more of those kinds of champions. Let me know your answers in the comments below. Now with that said, let's hop into the video. First up, we have got some skins. We're expecting to see some new KDA skins dropped this patch. KDA all-out skins are going to be released for Akali, Ahri, Evelynn, and Kai'Sa, and they will all soon be available in the store. Also, Kai'Sa's skin will have a prestige edition you can unlock. Seraphine's skin will also be released when she's introduced into the game as well, so there's no doubt that it's going to be hype. Make sure to keep your eyes on the store as these skins look amazing, and I suggest you guys go purchase them if you've been saving your RP to treat yourself. Or go ahead and buy some more and treat yourself anyway. Now let's talk about balance changes. In the top lane, we've got 2 changes to talk about. First up is the nerf to top lane Lulu. Our high elo tier list does include her if you watch those, but for the general player base, Lulu has not been an issue. As of late, however, Lulu has been slowly crawling into the meta and becoming a much more popular top laner across all ranks. Lulu is receiving this nerf specifically because of her presence in high elo solo queue as a top laner. Especially in Korean solo queue, Lulu top has been used for months now because of her immense utility, reliability, and because she's a rather safe blind pick. To keep her from being too powerful, Lulu's Q damage has been reduced from 80 to 260 to 80 to 220. 40 less damage when maxed is a huge nerf, and Lulu will be a much weaker lane bully than before from level 3 onward. The high base damage on her Q let her get away with not building any AP items, but instead going for a traditional support build supplemented by solo lane income. Riot has given this treatment to many other supports when they began seeing play in the top lane, and Lulu is no exception. Like we mentioned, Lulu wasn't included on our list, and unfortunately, her introduction into it won't be a stellar one as she's just been nerfed. We'll place Lulu in the B tier for this patch. The next change is to Nasus. His ultimate's bonus resistances have been increased from 15 to 55 to 40 to 70. However, he'll no longer gain resistances with every second. This is a buff for his rank 1 ultimate, leaves his rank 2 ultimate around just as strong, and a situational nerf for his rank 3 ultimate. However, the fact that he gains much more starting resistance is a big deal. Even at max rank, you have to value the fact that you gain an immediate burst of resistance bonuses. Rather than having to wait for the ultimate to ramp up, you are at full power from the get-go, and quite clearly, the starting amount is much higher from this patch onward. Unless he gets nerfed, of course, I think this change is a giant buff for Nasus, even if his late game might feel weaker. Does it really matter if Nasus's late game resistances are sometimes a little bit lower? Honestly, no. Because if it's late game, you're probably going to lose to a 1000 stack Nasus regardless of a 20 armor loss. Instead, the focus should be on how his rank 1 ultimate gained. Now, his rank 6 power spike is so much stronger than before, and should allow him to take fights much more effectively against aggressive top laners once he does manage to attain his ultimate. We're going to leave Nasus in the A tier for now, but for low elo players especially, you want to pick him up. For those of you who are silver or below, we'll consider Nasus an S tier pick, but considering the entire player base collectively, we've placed him in the A tier. With those 2 changes, the rest of our tier list remains unchanged. In our OP tier, we still feature Darius for yet another patch. In the S tier, we have Fiora, Garen, Jax, Urgot, Singed, Illaoi, Shen, and Malphite. Malphite was recently added in our mid-patch update because of his recent surge in gameplay. In both high elo and overall, Malphite has been finding an immense amount of success. The fact that he builds so much armor lets him find success against many of the meta top laners right now. Although he is a tank, Malphite's damage output and backline access have definitely been up there, and if you want to play a tank but also carry at the same time, give him a chance. He might surprise you. I know tanks aren't that fun, but I personally think Malphite might be the exception because it's so satisfying pressing R on an enemy carry and 1v1ing them when you only have tank items. Next up, let's run through the jungle. In the jungle, we're seeing Karthus get nerfed this patch as well. Karthus' Q damage has been reduced from 50 to 130 to 45 to 125. This loss of 5 damage is very big for both his skirmishing as well as his jungle clear. Hitting a single target with Q doubles the damage, so knowing that a spell with basically no cooldown has lost any amount of damage is going to hurt how quickly Karthus can speed clear through the jungle. Ultimately, this nerf was targeted at elite levels of play, where Karthus has been finding too much success in spite of multiple nerfs. However, it will inevitably hurt low and mid elo players as well. We'll be moving Karthus down from the A to the B tier as a result of this seemingly small but massive nerf. In contrast, Sejuani has received a small buff this patch. Her ultimate's damage has gone up from 100 to 150 to 125 to 175 for the short range hit, and 150 to 350 to 200 to 400 for the long range one. With its long cooldown, this buff will only help out in fights that Sejuani should have already won. Her ultimate is a tool for making power plays, and the increased damage ensures that fights are a bit more decisive when she uses it. We'll be leaving her in the A tier for now, as this isn't a giant change. It's a nice one though, and I'm sure that Sejuani players are going to appreciate this patch a bit more because of it. With those two changes covered, we have no other changes to report for our jungle tier list. Thus, our OP picks in the jungle are still Rammus and Fiddlesticks, followed by Hecarim, Evelynn, Kha'Zix, Nunu, Rek'Sai, Vi, Elise, and Kayn. However, there are a couple of picks that we want you guys to keep your eyes out for. Skarner, while unpopular, is absolutely destroying right now. He holds win rates as high as 53% in both low and high elo. This high win rate might be a result of players having inexperience versus him, but we do think that Skarner is a relatively powerful pick, just slept on right now. We haven't moved him up in the tier list because of his extremely low play rate, but we're confident that he's at least an A tier pick. Another A tier pick worth mentioning is Ivern, who's also highly undervalued. He received some buffs a few patches ago that have really helped him out with both aggressive play as well as helping his allies out. His win rates have been a bit higher since patch 10.19 when his slow got buffed, and we think he's another excellent jungler that's undervalued. However, he is definitely a situational pick, but when your team needs some peel or has a carry champion that might need help surviving, Ivern can definitely be a great choice. That's it for the jungle, so let's head into the mid lane next. We've got a few changes in the mid lane that we need to go over, so let's get right into it. First up is a nerf that a lot of mid laners have wanted for a while now. Zed is finally getting his damage checked a bit. Zed's incredible solo lane pressure makes him a menace, and while he does fall off, I know that a lot of mid laners do not have a fun time 1v1ing him. It's solo queue after all, and their jungler camping you while yours is off watering the plants in the jungle doesn't help much either. With or without jungle assistance though, Zed is pretty self-sufficient, which is a great asset in solo queue especially. His E's damage has been reduced from 70 to 170 to 70 to 150. Zed's E is a very reliable form of damage. It's much easier to land than his Q, meaning that a nerf to it is a nerf to his damage output in basically every situation. However, it's only lost 20 damage when maxed, so it could be much worse. The reason for this is that Zed's E isn't his first ability to get maxed. You won't be feeling these nerfs very much until level 13. A nerf to his Q, however, would have been much more apparent, as that's what he maxes first, and you'd notice it at level 9. We do, however, think that Zed will be noticeably weaker in the mid game, but not enough for us to drop him down from the S tier, so he's here to stay this patch. Leblanc, on the other hand, got buffed this patch. Her E's mana cost has been reduced from 70 to 50, while her E's base damage went up from 40 to 120 to 50 to 130, and the delayed damage from 70 to 230 to 80 to 240. These are actually huge buffs for Leblanc. While she may have only gotten 20 damage, which we just talked about, Leblanc's buffs start from the moment she learns her E ability. Whether it's rank 1 or maxed out at rank 5, her chain now deals 20 more damage if you land both parts of it. Especially in the early game, this is a giant buff, and even in the mid game, 20 extra damage is big enough to make a difference. You'll have to be much more attentive when playing against Leblanc, as getting hit by her chain this patch is going to hurt that much more. Leblanc will remain an A tier pick for now, but we'll continue monitoring her win rate this patch, as she's always been on the cusp of breaking into the S tier. And finally, Brand got some buffs to help him out as a mid laner. He struggles a lot, as he has a ton of weaknesses that players can expose, so hopefully the buffs he got this patch will help him thrive. Brand's passive explosion has been adjusted. Instead of dealing 12 to 16% plus 1.5% for every 100 AP, it now deals 10 to 14% of his target's HP plus 2% for every 100 AP. His E now always spreads to nearby enemies. His target no longer needs to be ablaze. The spread range has been adjusted accordingly, from 375 to 300. But when targets are ablaze, however, this spread range has been doubled to 600. And lastly, Brand can now bounce his R off of himself. This last change especially is a great one. If you want to go for that aggressive 1v1 against Brand, you'll need to be careful, as his damage output has gone up significantly as a result of this change. The E change will also help out Brand's wave clear significantly, and we think he'll have a much better time in the mid lane this patch. With these massive, yes, actually massive changes, we've moved Brand into the B tier. Of course, we also expect him to feel slightly stronger as a support as well. Thus, our OP pick for the mid lane is still Fizz, and following him up in the S tier are Yone, Vladimir, Zed, Talon, Echo, Diana, Annie, Nocturne, and Yasuo. Now with that said, we'll jump into the bottom lane next. We've got plenty more bottom lane changes this patch, and we know you already expected this first one. That's right, Samira got nerfed again. Riot themselves acknowledged that players are continuously improving with her. In spite of nerfs, her win rates are still about the same, because player growth has offset any changes to champion strength. This patch, Samira's base AD has been reduced from 59 to 57, while her base armor has been reduced from 28 to 26. These nerfs are intended to give players more opportunities to fight her early on. Reduced armor is less effective health, meaning that any damage you do deal will be much more noticeable than before. Loss of base AD hits any marksman hard, so there's not much to be said about that. Our analysts still think that Samira will need bigger nerfs to be dropped from the OP tier, so we'll leave her there for now. Next up is a buff for Xayah. Xayah's attack speed per level has been buffed from 3.3% per level to 3.9%. She's been underperforming a bit, and this should hopefully bring her up to par with more popular picks right now. This buff will definitely help out her late game, as any traditional marksman will benefit heavily from attack speed bonuses. Xayah will remain in the B tier for now, however, as this buff still seems a bit small. Next up is Ashe, who received an overall adjustment. Ashe's early game feels a little bit too strong, so her power curve is receiving some changes. Her W is very troublesome to play against, so that's what's getting touched this patch. Rather than always firing 9 arrows, it'll now fire 7 to 11 based on the rank of the ability. This should make it a little easier to avoid her W in the early game, but still allow her to feel about just as strong later into the game. 2 more arrows in the late game can be a huge buff depending on the situation, especially at max range, where the arrows are further spread out. Overall, this doesn't feel like a big nerf or buff, and will leave Ashe in the S tier for now. And finally, Jinx got a buff. A small one though. Her traps now deal full damage immediately, instead of dealing damage over 1.5 seconds. Overall, it's just a quality of life buff, but it is a buff nonetheless, because the damage output comes out faster now. Getting hit by her traps will feel that much more punishing now. Jinx will also remain in the A tier for now. We haven't made any adjustments to the tier list, but there are 2 S tier picks we want you guys to keep your eyes peeled for. With Samira banned all the time, you're definitely going to need a backup, and we suggest Jhin and/or Misfortune. Both of these champions have ridiculously powerful early games, and thus, incredible lane pressure. Having a dominant bottom lane in the early game is super important, as winning the bottom lane makes securing dragons and the dragon soul so much easier. If you do manage to pick up early leads, you can force fights over and over again, while your opponents need to sit in the side lane and pick up farm to catch back up. Our OP pick for this patch is still Samira, followed by Caitlyn, Ashe, Jhin, Draven, Ezreal, the Lux and Sona duo, Misfortune, and Vayne. Finally, let's wrap things up with supports. We've only got one support change to report, and that is to Annie. Annie's support was a thing of the past, but fell off in recent years. However, this patch includes a massive change that'll without a doubt bring Annie back as a possible support option. Rather than providing damage reduction, Annie's shield actually provides a shield now, which is absolutely amazing. But hey, I kind of like the creativity of a damage reduction shield as opposed to a flat one. Now it's just plain and simple, but at least it's very clear. It now shields for 40 to 240 plus 40% of Annie's AP, and the biggest change is that it can now be cast on allies. Also, it now costs 20 more mana, going up from 20 to 40. Shielding an ally is one of the most iconic moves a support can make. Even if Annie supports are out here building 500 AP and one-shotting their enemies, they can still call themselves supports because they can shield their allies and save them now. I like it. I strangely and scarily enough like it. Honestly, I do. Annie can act as that bridge between AP supports and enchanters, as Annie kind of does both with this new shield. She deals plenty of damage, but building AP also means that she'll provide bigger shields for her allies. We'll leave Annie unrated until our mid-patch update next week, so make sure to hit that subscribe button so you know when we release it. It also might just make Annie mid that much scarier. For support as well, we have no other changes to the tier list to report, so let's run through our S tier. In our S tier, we have Lulu, Blitzcrank, Soraka, Bard, Morgana, Nami, Janna, Leona, Alistar, Lux, and Swain. We expect Annie to probably place between the A and S tier. She'll definitely be a hot pick for low to mid elo players because AP supports typically find a ton of success there. Swain, for example, currently holds an overall 52% win rate, but we see this number go as high as 54% in brackets like Bronze and Iron. Picks like Brand and Zyra are very powerful in low elo, so if you're trying to carry yourself from those brackets, go ahead and give Annie a try this patch, alongside Swain, who feels so good to play in low elo. Players there just aren't as good at playing against Swain's short range, so you can easily reap the benefits of having high damage output, great crowd control, and durability. These sort of strengths are very powerful against newer and less experienced players. That concludes support as well as our patch rundown. Thank you all so much for watching, and like always, we really appreciate the support you guys give us. One more time though, you'll want to head over to ProGuides.com if you're looking for more resources to improve. I wish you guys the best of luck on your climb this patch, and hope you guys see the victory screen more than the less pleasant one that we all hate. I'll catch you all in our next video, and I'll see you next time.